Welcome back, Sunshine. This is video 4 in our vertical concrete fireplace series. I am so glad you're here. In this video, I'll show you how to use those foam insulation sheets to prepare for the vertical concrete. Now, this is the method that I used in my fireplace to reduce the overall weight of the project. Now, this is one of those things that's much easier to show than tell, so let's get started. I'm about 90% finished with this, getting the foam rocks on the wall. And now I want to remind you why I am using the foam to make the stones instead of just slapping the vertical concrete mixture up there and forming the stones with that. This is a second story room, so I want to reduce the weight as much as possible. I think this is a fairly good size fireplace here. So I really think that all in all, I am saving about 300 pounds in weight on this. I feel a lot better about where my total weight for this project is going to come in by doing this. Otherwise, I wouldn't go to this mess and this trouble. Okay, so let's look at some of the tools that you're going to need for this. All right. Now, I like to use just field stone or create field stone. The story behind this would be somebody just walked out into the field with a wagon and gathered up what stones they could find. Different types of stones, different colors, different shapes, and then fit them in together to make their fireplace or their wall or whatever. Say, for instance, if you want to do like quarried limestone or some kind of cut stone, this would be a level or a laser level would be essential because you want to make sure that you keep your courses of stacked stone straight. I have one here because I like to occasionally scatter in some horizontal or some vertical stones like over there. And so I just want to kind of put these through the center line and make sure that those are level, because if you don't, when you sit back and look at this, and if this one's tipping uphill, you'll notice it and it would bother me forever. So I just do a few of those to make sure anywhere I get some stacked stone looking pieces in there that I keep those level. There's a couple more here. This one I just followed the line of the form of the cutout for the TV mount. I will not be putting foam here inside of the mount. I will just be sanding that down. I'll be putting the fiber mesh that we'll get to in the next step over it and priming it, and then we'll just put the stone right on it because it's going to be very thin. Actually, you'll never see that. My husband asked me why I don't just paint it, and I thought, well, because it's a stone fireplace, and so I want to keep the impression of a stone fireplace going. I also will not put foam inside of the wood box down here. It will be the same thing. I will just stretch the mesh over it, and I'll put the concrete right on it. First thing you'll need is your foam. I usually use the pink stuff. It has a little bit different texture, but not very much. This is a little more rubbery. I feel like it was a little hard, more difficult to cut, but it's not a huge deal. This was what my nearest Lowe's carried. They didn't carry the pink stuff, so I got it, and it's fine. What you don't want to get is the white, that where you can see the little pebbles of the styrofoam. I don't think that you can see this, but there are no visible air bubbles in this. It's very dense, so it is dense enough to hold up as a substrate for the concrete. All right, now you'll need to cut. Let me set this out of the way. Let's do this in order. There's options of a razor knife or a hot knife. This is made for cutting foam. It has one upside. The upside is that it cuts fantastic. It just flies through this. You can angle it and get nice beveled edges, and we'll talk about that in a minute why you want that. And it's just great. It's got some downsides. This blade gets to 975 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's dangerous. 975-degree tool combined with this foam create some really noxious fumes. So you do have to use a really good quality respirator, not like an N95, paper mask, like you do if you're sanding and you're trying to keep dust particles out. You actually have to have a respirator with this. And if you don't have a respirator and don't want to invest in one, just don't even use it. Now, this is a cheap one I got at Harbor Freight. They don't last very long. In fact, I bought a new one, or my husband went and picked up a new one for me yesterday. And I think within 4 hours in, didn't even drop it. I just turned around and I hit the wall with it. And it's such a high temperature that this thin piece of metal gets very, very fragile. And so it bent. And when these bend, the elements inside of it just fail for sure. If you drop it, it's done. So if you want to decide, you've got the respirator, you can ventilate your house properly, and you want to try one of these, $19.98 at Harbor Freight, $4 for the extended warranty, which you want to buy if you buy this, because you will be taking it back. Razor knife, you want a long one. You don't want just the one that has the little sort of trapezoid shaped blade in it, because you'll need to get along. I've already cut this, but you want to be able to cut like this. And this one actually probably needs a new blade. But even though it doesn't cut as fast as the hot blade, you don't have to wear a respirator when you're using it. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice today. You need a spray foam, and that's what we use as the adhesive. You can see some of that orange. I've used 4 different brands of spray foam on this. I wanted to use up what I had, and then I went and got some more, and it all seems to work the same. The $10 can of this doesn't work any better from what I've seen than this $4, and I think this was $4.50 or $4.90. I don't know if my voice will hold up for this today. You will need drywall screws, and I'll show you why you need that in addition to the adhesive. You need a drill, and these, oh, by the way, these are 1 1/4 inch drywall screws. Now, let's go ahead and just cut a piece. You need to leave a little more space than you want in the finished rocks, because you're going to be coating all this with fairly thin coat of the vertical concrete mix. So you want to leave plenty of space. And there again, you'll see when we get into it.
That was a long day. I lost not only my voice, but the battery went dead on my microphone. So we'll just pretend I was saying insightful, witty things. I mostly kept this in because I wanted you to see how to deal with corners. You have to remember you're seeing 2 sides of your stones when you build something like this fireplace. So I just think about how I want that shape of that stone to carry around to the other side of the structure. I am going to do my best not to let this video get as long as last week's, but I keep thinking of things I don't want to forget to tell you. All right, so it was 2 years ago when I did that project. And, I talked about that foam knife that didn't work very well. Well, since then, I found this. I don't know if you can see that tiny little wire that stretches between those arms of this U shape. You can cut with that wire. There are attachments of different thicknesses. This one has like a little scoop end on it. This has this U shape so you could dig out channels. There's a little box back here where you can adjust the temperature. And it is the surface that does the cutting is so fine that it makes far fewer fumes. You still want to have really great ventilation. If I weren't doing the video, I would have my respirator on, even though it's February and it's 58 degrees outside and it's been very cold, so I'm taking advantage of it. Okay, so let's start with cutting some foam. Okay, now this is 1-inch thick insulation. I used 1/2 inch thick on that fireplace, but I just wanted to show you how to cut these rocks with this new tool, so I just grabbed what I had. Look at that. You don't want to pull too hard. I'm looking to make sure. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Looking to make sure that you can see. Now, so when you're putting this up on the wall, this back edge, the one that's going to make contact, that's going to be covered with the mortar when we put the mortar on. So don't worry about carving that. You just want the face. And I like to bevel the edge just a little. You can always build it up with mortar when we put the cement on. But this keeps you from having to work around sharp edges when you start putting that mortar on. Because if you do that, when you come around these sharp edges, the mortar will be thin there, and that would make it more likely to chip. Now, like I said, we've had this fireplace finish for 2 years. It hasn't cracked. I've knocked up against it with the vacuum sweeper. It didn't crack. So these are just a few little things that I do to help assure that that doesn't happen. Look at that. That's just, I mean, I could do this for hours. Okay, so there is a pretty good rock shape. Now again, this is 1 inch thick. That's very thick. You're going to end up with really thick mortar if you use 1 inch insulation, so use 1/2 inch. Now see, here I am playing. I could do this, like I said, do this all day. Okay, I put this other end on here, and I'm going to give it just a second to heat up. So you might want to come through here. Look at that, it's already hot. And just sort of take out a chunk. Let's try this. I'm just trying them all out because I actually haven't used this U-shaped one yet. Okay, let's say you want to create a little low spot in the stone. Look at that. That just pulls that out. And we'll take this all the way across. And we'll shape it a little. There. All right. And it comes with a little stand, like a hot glue gun. You want to put it in that. Okay, let's pick out a spot. Oh, gotta put our foam on. And I buttered up really well with the foam. I don't want to be stingy with the foam. Okay, I had you out of the screen. I had you out of the shot when I put this one on. So I put the foam on the back of that, and I applied it pretty thickly. Came back with a drywall screw. And honestly, as the screws just hold it in place till the foam cures, and then I'm kind of a stingy girl, so as these set up, I start pulling these drywall screws out and reuse them. All right, here's one. One thing you don't want to do. Okay, see, I have an odd little shape right here. What you don't want to do is cut a stone that fits that exactly, because that's probably not going to happen in nature, and that starts looking fake. So just get something that fills it in closely. Here, I'll break off another piece. And honestly, breaking this off, you get much more random shapes. See, look at this. We didn't mean to do that. And I'm going to leave this little thing, and I'll take off the straight edges here so they look more natural. Again, we'll bevel. We'll bevel that edge. That looks good. And this is still as stinky, so get a respirator and wear it. It's just impossible to talk and do this at the same time and only be here a few minutes. So I'm gonna leave that where it is. Let's plug in the wire one again. That's actually my favorite. And don't pull too hard. You just want to let it float along. Watch where you're pulling toward your hand. Pull some off the front. Now, rocks will have some straight edges. You just don't want a lot. We're just going to bevel that a little. We're going to go ahead and leave that curve in it. You've got to find the happy medium between really paying attention to how you place the rocks and then just really fussing. You don't want to fuss because number one, it won't be fun, and number two, it'll take you forever. Now, depends on what you want. I wanted a few little rocks. And it doesn't matter which side. Both surfaces are fine. Okay. I'm really not going to do anything to this one. Okay, now I'm going to take a scrap and I'm going to wipe up the excess foam so I don't have a big bunch of foam in here. Now, as far as spacing, here's another reason to put the drywall screws in it. As this foam expands, it's going to push it up off the wall. You have to use the drywall screws to hold it down. I was thinking maybe I'd get away with it just quickly, but I cannot. And this is really hard to screw into. This is that old pressboard stuff. The only scrap plywood I had laying around was some really good oak plywood, and I didn't want to use it for this. So I went to the lumber yard, and it was $31 for a piece of just utility plywood this size. And I thought, I didn't have the pickup, so I couldn't bring home a whole sheet. So I found the cheapest thing they had, which was this $11 pressboard. So that's why I'm having so much trouble getting the screws to go in. Okay, let's stick. And I didn't put my gloves on, so I'm going to have this stuff all over, this foam all over my hands, or this adhesive. Clean up the edge. Just a little. Now, if you don't worry if you don't get all of it. You can use a razor knife as this sets up. Just little fillers. Now, if you don't like that, don't use that. Stick with bigger pieces. But I like to, when I'm doing something like this, especially if I'm trying to make something look old, I like to tell myself a story about it. So, you know, these rocks came out of somebody's field somewhere, preferably in a horse-drawn buggy, in a horse-drawn wagon. And, you know, the whole family was out there gathering up enough rocks to make this fireplace. So they were picking up everything. Twist it around. As you can see, it's real forgiving. And spacing. Now it depends on what you want. There's no rule. I would not want this much spacing exactly, but I'm leaving enough space that, you know, we can put our cement over it, you know, half an inch or so, and then the mortar will come up on top of that cement. So you want to leave some space so that you can work between the stones. For folks that want to know more precise measurements, like that is 1 1/4 inches apart. That one's about 1 inch. That's just a little over 1 inch. So that's 1 1/2. So somewhere in there. They don't have to exactly be the same unless that's the way you want it to be. This is your rock fireplace or rock wall. All right, we're going to do one more. Now, the foam that I used in the other part of the video to actually make the fireplace, it didn't snap like this. And I prefer this very much. So I would get the pink stuff or the blue stuff.
Pink stuff and blue stuff is not helpful. For now, the pink stuff is Owens Corning brand insulation sheets. The blue stuff is Dow brand. In the last video of the series, I'll include a complete list of products and sources.
Yeah, like that, like that. Keep the foam away from the hot wire. The spray foam. If you wanted to have somebody cutting stones, or if you just want to cut, if you're doing like here we're doing random, if you just want to cut some random shapes and get all of this part done, and then all you have to do is, as you apply it, go back and cut what rocks you need to fill in the gaps. All right, I'm going to stop right there for now. Okay, the vertical cement can be applied in varying thicknesses, but you want to stay rather consistent on your thicknesses. All right, let me show you what I was thinking about. I'm going to carefully okay, I cut off a chunk. Let's say you wanted this rock to have a bump out in it, so that it would just to give it a little pizzazz, a little more character. Hold it in place with a screw. Say you want that irregularity of bumpy surface rocks. You really don't want to have where this is going to be like a 1 inch or 3/4 inch thick layer of cement here, and then bump out to a 2 inch thick layer. That's not ideal. This works better if there's some consistency. So you're going to give that bump out, that texture, that dimension with some more foam. And then you're just going to come up with the cement and you're going to shape that bulk with more foam. Does that make sense? Now, if you wanted to have 4 or 5 inch thick stones on your wall, you can, but the whole thing needs to be that thick or close to it. Say for instance, I could start here and then just slowly grade out to another inch on this, but you wouldn't want to just have this abrupt change right here. It's not ideal, okay?
So the foam is applied, and as you can see, I primed it. I actually used some shellac primer on this because it's what I had, but any primer that says it has bonding qualities will work. I don't always prime the foam, but the reason I did this time, in all honesty, is I got so carried away with wanting to get started, I forgot to prime the raw drywall before I started slapping foam up here. So this way I get the exposed drywall primed and the foam. It's not going to hurt, can only help. Now I am stretching this mesh. Now this is a fairly flexible mesh. You can see how malleable it is.
This takes a lighter, more flexible mesh because we are going to have to actually shape the mesh to fit, to contour around these foam stones, and then we will staple it down in the channels where the grout will go. And so that spider lath that we used on the other application, it just is too rigid and not flexible for this project.
Go ahead and give it a little slice right through here. And you can cut this and piece this as you need to. You just need to be sure you overlap, because it's the continuity of the layer that protects your concrete from cracking. Okay, so all I do, I've got this air stapler, and I just get in there and I just stretch it really tight. And what will happen is when we use either our hands or our trowel to push this in there, you'll get this mesh embedded in the concrete layer, and it's like having rebar or chicken wire or something like that, reinforcing like a concrete driveway or sidewalk. Same principle. And I am using a combination of 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch staples here. You don't need much. And it's only different because I'm using up what I have. And I am working around the camera as usual. So it's making it look like this is harder than it is. But I did the side over here and it went fast. So, and I'm not so much trying to go in the styrofoam, the rocks. I'm trying to go into the drywall behind it. Here we go. And there again, you don't want it to get too poofy right here, and you can do it into the styrofoam. You may have to turn your air pressure down a little bit so it doesn't cut right through the mesh. I had to turn it down some. And if like I've ended up with a little too much right there, I can just slash it and get rid of that excess. What I started to say a minute ago, you don't want to leave too much bulk right here or it will stick out through your concrete, especially since we're wanting to keep the layer really thin. So see, I can just, where I cut that, I can cut away if there's too much. I can get scissors and I can just cut that, which I probably what I will do.
You will quickly develop a rhythm of pushing that mesh down and then stapling. Just don't get going so fast. Safety first. You don't want to get a staple through the finger. Now, I've never had that happen, but I try to be pretty careful too, so just pay attention.
So that is what I'll be doing. It's a great arm workout. It helps if you can do this with either hand. And then finally, we'll be able to actually do what the whole point of this is, to get some concrete on the wall. Okay? Let me show you one more thing. Okay, right here where I cut this to make it a little easier to work with. Let's treat this as if we were finished with one sheet of material and we're ready to start another one. Cut this more over here to get it out of the way. So you want to make sure that you lap one over the other like this. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, because the whole point of this is you're going to have a layer that's continuous, and that's what keeps any kind of concrete project, that's what makes it one of the things that will guarantee success. If whatever your support for it is, if it is a continuous nonstop layer. Okay, and we'll just I know I'm kind of a dinosaur because on a lot of tools I don't really mind if they're not battery operated. I've had this one for years and it's working just fine. Probably when it kicks the bucket, I will probably get a battery operated one. The netting is all on. I have it all stapled. I've stapled it in contours around the stone. And you know, I told you it was probably going to take around 3,000 staples. It took over 4,000, and it took me all day yesterday. Honestly, I don't know if I had known how long this would take, I would have done this. I'm assuming that it's going to be worth it when I'm finished, but this has been so time consuming. But now we're down to getting close to business as usual. So we get to do just the normal applications of the concrete mix. So what I'm doing right now is I'm adding a concrete bonding adhesive. This one is Quickcrete that I just found at Lowe's. I used to buy a more expensive one that I had to order from a specialty company that made my vertical concrete mix that I buy, and it was fine, but I ran out in a recent project, and so I went to Lowe's and bought some of that, and it worked fine, and it's a lot less expensive, and I don't have to pay shipping, and I like to buy it locally.
A little note here. In the last video, I used a different product, and that one was suitable for either using as a bonding primer or as a fortifier to actually put in your cement mixture. This is just for bonding. It's an excellent product, but do take note that you cannot add this into your cement mix.
You can see it looks sort of like watered down Elmer's glue. And you could spray it on, you could roll it on. If this wall If we weren't putting these dimensional forms on here, I would have just rolled it with a paint roller. But since I need to go around all of it, I'm just using a chip brush. You could use a really big, like a stain brush or a barn brush, just whatever you have. It's messy, it's gonna drip a little because of the mesh. And you just wanna make sure that it touches every part. Down here. I'm mostly focusing on the grout lines. Because I have found that concrete just sticks to this foam real easily. It has some tiny, it has a tiny bit of porosity to it, so concrete just likes to stick to it, but I still want to get some on here. But I really want to focus on the drywall parts here. And some of you are Googling right now to see if porosity is a word, and I'm not sure it is. So let me know if I was wrong. And it will take about 3/4 of a gallon for this probably. And I'll set a fan on it so that it dries more quickly. Now, I've seen directions different ways. I have seen some instructors that will say you want to start applying your cement product while this is still tacky. I've seen others that say you want it to dry completely. I've done it a little bit of both ways. I mean, I wouldn't want to take it while it's, start while it's still dripping and try to put cement over that, but I've been fine doing it when it's tacky. I've let it dry overnight. I would finish, late in the day and then come back at it the next day, and so everything was completely dry. That worked fine. So just follow the directions of your products that you use. Now, there are some bonding agents that really are so thin you can put them in like a pump-up sprayer, like you would use to spray for bugs. So I don't know if you're using a bonding agent like that, you could do that. This would go a lot faster. You just want to make sure everything around you is protected. And this is just really all there is to it.
Preparation is essential, but I'm always glad when it's finished. Next video, we finally get to get our hands dirty. We're going to play in some cement. Now, videos come out every Saturday, and I so hope you join us for the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay creative, and always be kind.